Hi, it's Ramsey Dewey at the JX Fight Club in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. Today we have a question from our friend Dan 0101010110. Can't believe I just read that whole thing. And for those of you wondering how do you ask questions, just leave them in the comments down below. I read the comments. So if you're writing those hurtful things that some of you are saying, cause a little tear in this eye right here, I gotta wipe off. Well, leave them anyway, because I'll read them, and I do appreciate any feedback, positive, negative, neutral, whatever. So Dan says, can you tell me how it feels to go from a weak, undisciplined person to a strong, disciplined person that trains and works even when they strongly do not want to? Obviously, you are forcing yourself to do what you should do rather than what's easy, tempting, and enjoyable. But is it always a constant struggle, or do you get strong discipline and then it becomes easy? Or does it always remain hard, and you just do it anyway, and you forever struggle, and that's just what it takes to be exceptional or strong in control of yourself? Okay, yes and no and yes, and sometimes. Now, let's break that down a little bit, because that was a lot of questions in one question. Let's go back to the beginning here. How does it feel to go from a weak, undisciplined person to a strong, disciplined person? Here's the thing. People who are weak and undisciplined don't always realize that they are weak and undisciplined. Case in point, right here. This guy right here, man. So I had this chat with my friend Jerry the other day. The dude who does the fight commentary breakdowns. So if you don't know about his channel, go check it out. And he posted one of my old fights from like 10 years ago, and it was my worst fight of all time. And he gave some commentary about that and said some remarkably kind words for how lousy of a fight it was. And there were a lot of things going on that week. I had 3 fights in a week, one down in Singapore, then I flew up to Xi'an for another fight, and I flew over to Inner Mongolia for another fight a few days later, and man, a lot of things going on there. And looking back at that time period, I had this conversation with him, and he actually helped me find a video of one of my other fights, the fight up in Mongolia, a couple days later. It was like a kickboxing match. And so I'm looking at these fights, thinking like, just remembering how I was training at the time and remembering feeling disciplined at the time and looking back like, man, I wasn't nearly as disciplined as I thought I was. I wasn't training nearly as hard as I thought I was. I wasn't training as smart as I thought I was. Hindsight is 20/20, man. Once you figure out a better way to do things and you look back and you realize what you thought was discipline was garbage. But again, we all have to start somewhere. We start somewhere, and if we keep on that path, we get a tiny little bit better at a time. So massive improvements obviously are a long-term goal, not a short-term one. But yeah, I was watching this fight and chatting with my friend Jerry, and yeah, we had some interesting conversations about that, and I was just thinking like, man, I'm so much different now. What made the difference? I was thinking to myself, well, obviously I know. I put in a lot more work now. I'm much more disciplined than I once was. Which is weird, because now I'm retired from professional fighting, and back when I was fighting, I think I was more concerned about getting paid and showing up to as many fight events as I possibly could, and just cramming in as many fights as I could, because fighters, we don't say no to fights. You get offered a fight, you say, sure, yeah, take it. No matter who it is, no matter what it is, no matter where it is, fighters fight. It's what we do. It's our job. And when you live in Southeast Asia, in China in particular, and there's a fight available every week, twice a week, 3 times a week, and you're offered these fights, like, oh, come get $1,000 for this fight over here, get $2,000 for this fight over there, you'll get a $3,000 bonus for this one, or whatever it is. It's hard to say no when you really need the cash. Even though what you probably should be doing is saying, no, I really need this time to improve. because I'm not ready yet. And that's a really hard pill to swallow for a young man with a young man's ego. Now, I'm not quite a young man anymore. I'm 40 years old now, but, back in my 20s, back in my early 30s, it's very tempting to think, oh, this is all there is. After this, I'm going to be over the hill, and I'll never be able to do anything combat sports related again, and that's garbage. It's absolute garbage. Your body will adapt to the demands you put on it. So if you ask your body to keep moving, it will. It will. Let's go to the next part of that question. Obviously, you are forcing yourself to do what you should, rather than what's easy, tempting, and enjoyable. Yeah, I guess you could say that to an extent. Except I got to tell you, I really, really enjoy training. But I didn't always. I thought I did. I enjoyed parts of training before. I enjoyed aspects of training before. I enjoyed the fun parts of training before. Now it's different. Now I enjoy the challenge of training. Now I enjoy the crushing weight of training. Now I enjoy that feeling after accomplishing something that was just so impossibly difficult, and I get it done, and I look at myself, I look up at my whiteboard over there where I write down my lifting program or whatever it is, and I'm like, I did that, and I take a picture of that whiteboard. Some people go to the gym and they take a shirtless selfie of themselves, and I'm like, no, I want to take a picture of my work. The work I wrote down, my actual program, what I challenged myself with, and that's a cool feeling to me. It's also a good thing to do that because it keeps your activity logged so that you can reference it in the future. What else? So there's more to this question. Is it always a constant struggle, or do you get strong discipline and then it becomes easy? Well, yeah, kind of. Yes and yes. Yes and yes. So I wake up pretty early every morning. I wake up about 5 a.m. every morning in order to come out to the gym early, teach morning classes, and get everything done that I need to get done before that, during, and after. And waking up super early in the morning when it's dark outside, when it's cold outside, when it's hot outside, depending on the time of the year in this subtropical region of the world, it's not always fun. Actually, it's rarely ever fun to wake up early in the morning. It's kind of difficult. It's very tempting to put a snooze on the alarm and hit it over and over again. But there's a problem with that. There's a problem with that because that is a lack of discipline. So that part never really gets easy, but you do get used to it. Because again, the body and the mind and the soul adjust to the demands that we put on them. But the next part of that question, does it become easy? Yeah, sometimes some of it does. Like I said, you will adjust to the demands you put on yourself. So once upon a time, I was a super duper weakling. Back in college, I remember my roommates invited me to go lifting at the college weight room with them. And we got on the bench press, and I got a bar with 20 kilos on it, 44 pounds roughly. 45 pounds, something like that. And I could not press that bar for the life of me. And my roommates looked at each other like, what? We've never seen a grown adult human male who could not push up a 45-pound, 20-kilo bar. But that was me. Now, that's super easy. No problem. What changed? Well, I got stronger. Grow bigger muscles, lifting heavier weights is simple. Same thing with cardio. People always talk about cardio. Getting out of breath. What used to make you get out of breath? Well, if you get used to that activity, it's not going to faze you in that same way anymore. Once upon a time, going through a 3-round fight was kind of exhausting. Now, going 3, 5, 6, 10 rounds here in the gym, no problem. Because it's something I enjoy. And when you enjoy something, when you genuinely enjoy doing it, it's not so taxing. It's much, much easier to relax through the process. than to struggle through the process. Struggling makes everything harder. And such a waste of energy, that struggling. Finally, Dan asks, or does it always remain hard? Waking up at 5 a.m. does for me. For some people, it's really simple. My kids, for example, boom. They just wake up super early without even yawning or anything. They come and jump on my chest and say, "Daddy, wake up, Daddy, wake up." So maybe it'll get hard for them later on. Does it always remain hard and you just do it anyway and you forever struggle, and that's what it's like to be exceptional or strong or in control of yourself? Well, what you need to do is establish some habits, because habits are easy to keep doing. If it's not a habit, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a struggle. So establish some good habits. It's easy to establish a bad habit. You just keep doing it. But guess what? It's also easy to establish a good habit. You just keep doing it. And when you keep doing it, when you make it something that is integral to you, something that is part of your whole self, and you just tell yourself, this is what I will do because this is who I am. Guess what? You just do it automatically. Here's a small example. I don't drink, I never have. I don't smoke, I never have. And a lot of people struggle with those things. A lot of people struggle with those things. And it is very difficult to be a good athlete if you're smoking and drinking. And I have a lot of people come to the gym for the first time and they smoke and they drink on the regular. And it holds them back. And I could come and wag my finger and say, you just stop that. But I don't. Because their body tells them, hey, this is not conducive to the activity that you are participating in. They figure it out themselves. And man, I'm going to tell you, what I teach here at this gym has helped so many people quit smoking and quit drinking without me ever having to wag my fingers or say a single word. Why? Because that's the natural state of the human body, sobriety. The natural state of the human body is athleticism. The natural state of the human body is health. The natural state of the human body is being receptive to learning how to do stuff that is useful. And if we are unnaturally imposing limits on ourselves that hold us back from doing that, change those habits by replacing them. Here's another thing I learned, especially working with small children. I used to teach kids classes, which, again, taught me that I really hate teaching kids martial arts classes. But one thing that taught me is that instead of yelling, "No, don't do that," at these children, it's much more effective to give them a replacement behavior. So instead of telling little Billy, "Hey, little Billy, stop picking your nose and hitting your fellow students and throwing the focus mitts at my head and calling me a poo-poo head," you tell little Billy, "Stop and do some push-ups." And little Billy is much more likely to stop and do push-ups because that's a behavior that you gave him. That's an activity. That's something he can do. That's something he can focus on, than to simply cease and desist from all these other activities you don't want him to do. And guess what? You are exactly the same as little Billy. So instead of telling yourself, "Oh, I need to stop doing all this stuff that's bad for me," tell yourself, "I need to start doing this very specific thing that is good." Small, incremental, 1% steps. That's how we do it. Make some goals, little ones, and every day, 1%. increments, improvements add up into great, great, big, wonderful things. Thank you for watching. Now get out there and train.